Well, hello, everybody. It is January 29th. I am Michael Watson, and this is the IACT IMDHA Presenters Series. We're getting all ready for the 2017 Hypno Expo. The theme this year is Catch the Wave. It's going to be in Daytona Beach on May 19th through the 21st, and there will be pre- and post-conference programs before and afterwards. So for the next, for a total of 15 weeks, this will be the third of 15. We're interviewing on Sunday nights people that will be presenting pre- and post-conference programs. So here's your opportunity to hear from them and to find out a little bit about their work and about what their program is going to be like, and for you to ask any questions that you have. I will let you know that registration for the conference is open, and you can register by going out to the IACT or IMDHA website, or you can call the associations, or just so many ways that you can get yourself registered to join us at the Hypno Expo. So please do that. It's going to be a great program this year. There are 55 special, fantastic teachers, and nearly 100 courses and lectures and workshops will be going on. So please come and join us. By way of announcements, I've said before, this program is being recorded. You can get a copy of this recording, or you can go out to the IACT IMDHA forum tomorrow if you are a member, and you'll be able to review this online anytime that you want to, right there posted on the forum. And if not, you can just email me at flhypno@outlook.com, and I'll send you a link for it. CEUs are available for being here with us tonight, and you can get your CEUs, again, by going to the appropriate association's website. If you're a member of IACT or if you're a member of IMDHA, simply go to the website, log on with your member ID and stuff, and the page comes right up there for you that will show you where you can enter your CEUs, and you just let them know that you were on the call, and that you want your hour's worth of credit for it. Nice thing, you can get credit for an hour's worth of listening to us, and you don't even have to break a sweat. So good stuff. And next week, by the way, I'll be talking to George Bien, the elusive George Bien, who we've had a little trouble getting with in the last couple weeks. He will be with us next Sunday night to talk about the IACT Master Trainers Training program that takes place before and after the conference as well. So I'm out of breath already, and and there's so many things to say. I am so happy to be joined tonight by Sheila Granger, who has kept herself up and out of bed at 1 o'clock in the morning to talk to you. She has been described by the Times of India as Britain's leading hypnotist. She is a UK professional clinical hypnotherapist known internationally for her pioneering virtual gastric band hypnotherapy for weight loss, and having now trained around 1,900 therapists in 9 countries, and having licensed trainers to deliver her programs in 4 countries. She is an international trainer and a keynote speaker. Her clinical practice is based in a doctor's surgery in the UK. What else can I tell you? Having gained her qualifications in hypnotherapy, accredited by the General Hypnotherapy Standards by the Council in the UK, which, by the way, is a really important thing over there, she went on to build a 35-client therapy practice in just 3 years. She regularly features in both local and national press articles, and has appeared on BBC News, on primetime television. Sheila runs an online international mastermind class to help other therapists build their practice and experience the same results too. And more recently, she's pioneered an educational performance program in schools and colleges, helping students of all ages perform at their best. So a lot of stuff going on here with this wonderful lady. So Sheila, thank you so much for being here. We're really happy to have you on the call.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to have opportunity to talk to people, really, and it's really about sharing my experiences. That introduction makes me sound like some really grand, special person. But really, I think with all things with hypnosis, it's just about practice, isn't it? And then we find a little niche for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it's with anything, the more effort you put into into something, the more rewards you get. So I wouldn't recommend a 35-a-week client practice to anybody. At one point, fairly early on, it was 50 clients a week, and I definitely wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah.
That I was flogging myself to death, and although the results were still there for the clients, because what I tend to do is take people through a fairly simple process.
Sure.
As your own excitement about doing it starts to dwindle if you're not careful. So, I did eventually restructure things, and I refer work to other therapists now instead of trying to do everything myself.
Yeah. Boy, I know about that one. I got to tell you, here's where I would like to start, and I hope you don't mind me telling you a little bit of a story, because I think it must have been somewhere around 2009 or so. I was in England doing a program, and one of my students, I was training for Salad at the time, and one of my students told me that they had heard about some researchers in Spain, or some hypnotists in Spain, who had hypnotized, and I don't know if I've got this right, by the way. I probably don't. It was, a story told by somebody to somebody to somebody, but had hypnotized somebody and led them to believe that they had, been to a surgery, had the gastric band done, and subsequently they lost all kinds of weight. And there were two issues that came up. Immediately, some people in the class had some ethical considerations, because what they heard was, and what I heard, quite frankly, was too, that basically this person had been hypnotized to believe that they'd had a surgical procedure that they had not had. I know that that's not what you're up to, by the way, but this is what I heard at the beginning. And the other part of it was just, oh my God, could that possibly work? And I have to remember, when I first heard about it, I thought, and I'm really confessing to you here, I thought it was the craziest thing that I had ever heard of.
Yeah.
And then what happened is people kept coming to me and talking to me, and I mentioned my friend Elaine, and they were telling me that how wonderful your courses were, and the great work that they were doing with clients, and I remember one day just sitting down and considering this, and I thought to myself, I just imagined what it would be like if I had myself had a gastric band procedure. I just kind of imagined it in my body, right? And I thought, well, gosh, if I really could generate that experience for myself, what I noticed was I would naturally tend to eat less. Now, so here's my question for you. So I know I'm all over the map with this, and it's just that I heard a little bit from somebody and a little bit from somebody else, and your name was in the mix along with all these other things. And like I said, my initial intake was I thought that it was absolutely wildly nuts.
The very first thing that I'd heard about it in the hypnosis world was the Shiraz in Spain, and at the time my father-in-law used to send me on Saturday morning newspaper cuttings about hypnosis in the news. This one Saturday morning this article came, and it said that these people in Spain, they'd come up with this idea. They were charging people £3,000 UK to go and have treatment over 4 days, and they were getting them to imagine surgery. And I thought, that can't be right. That cannot be right. It can't possibly work for somebody. I couldn't get my head around it. But at the time, 80% of my clients were coming for weight loss, and I think the weight loss market for the hypnotherapist, hypnotist, I'm not quite sure what you call yourselves in Florida. It's a mass market, really. More and more people are seeking out hypnosis for weight loss.
Yes.
So I thought, what the heck, I'm going to put that type of concept to a bit of a trial. So I got 25 volunteers, not a single person paying me any money at all. Invited all these volunteers to a hotel room. I also invited my local press and media along to independently verify any results that I got. The worrying thing was the press did print an article to say this trial was taking place. So I thought, oh no, if this doesn't work, I haven't got a business left anymore. So I did run a little bit of a risk. And after the first session with these volunteers, a lady rang me up and she said, I have spent 45 years of my life thinking about food all the time, and all of a sudden I'm not thinking about it anymore. So what's happened there? There was people on that initial little bit of a trial that were due to have gastric surgery that cancelled their operations on the back of what they experienced. Now, to my mind, though, jumping around again a little bit with it, it's not about making somebody think they've had surgery. Part of my full programme, yes, a very tiny part of it is, okay, let's imagine surgery. But really, it's everything else that you can build around that protocol that can make it successful for somebody in the long term. Because otherwise, the results would be, they wouldn't be as great. It'd be a little bit like a stage hypnotist, and a percentage of that audience will be highly suggestible and will have up on the stage the people who are the most suggestible and who are going to accept the suggestions that are made to them. Now, if you were a bit like the gastric band, if you only got them to imagine surgery and didn't do anything else at all, you would probably get about the same results ratio from that full audience. Right. So we have to build more around it. But there's people, I read a newspaper article about a gentleman in Australia, and what he did is he had converted his full therapy practice to look like an operating room. So he used to, he dressed in his surgeon's green gowns, said, you mustn't eat anything 24 hours before you come. He got press for it. But really, as a profession, I don't think that does you much good. But because I immediately thought, I wonder what you wear when somebody comes to you for sex therapy. How do you dress up then? So, we have to build more into it than just imaginary surgery, if you like. But yeah, we know that our mind and body are all part of the same system, and we also know the subconscious doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is pretend. But, and some of your clients it is that gastric band side that really does it for them. One of my biggest successes early on, a lady called Sonia, and she lost 10 stone. I work in pounds and stones. So 10 stones, there's 14 pounds in a stone.
Right.
And she lost 10 stone. And it really was the band that had done it for her. And it was coming up to Christmas time, and she sent me a text message and said, can I just see you to tighten the band up, because I'm worried that I'm going to eat a little bit more before Christmas time. So she came back, we revisited that side of it, and she sent me a text message the next day and said, how tight have you made this band? Because I can hardly eat anything at all. But, but I've never had, and I've worked with hundreds of people with this system now, I haven't had any contraindications to it. I think the worst thing that happened was one lady rang me up afterwards after the first session and said to me, is it normal to be sick? Because I've had to stop at a motorway service station. I felt, and I've been sick, but presumably that's just the surgery, is it? But that's the first time anything like that had ever happened. But no, there's no, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it's done with children, and not because you would actually be doing anything ethically wrong. But I think as a profession, what we don't want to do is do something that we can be potentially ethically criticised for. I tend to find the media do tend to be on our side, really. They like interesting stories, they like hypnosis because it seems to be something different, and they're not going to discredit us unless we do something that's discreditable. Sure. And if they got hold of we were doing virtual gastric bands on children, then they're going to potentially put that out there, and the wrong side of things is going to be put across.
Sure. One of the things that really kind of made the penny drop for me with regard to this, as I mentioned, having first heard about it, and I was intrigued by the reports from other people. But then finally, I had a client that came to my office. I have a surgeon who refers to me very often, and he works specifically with women, and he had a woman that was going to. She had had a gastric band done years ago, like years ago. And she was well over 550 pounds or something like that. She wanted to have another procedure. She wanted to have a gastric bypass. And the reason that they sent her to me was that she was too fat to have the surgery. And I thought, well, isn't this ridiculously paradoxical? Then why don't we start using the hypnosis to take care of that? And we don't have that kind of consideration to deal with.
I think the other thing as well, the reason why it became so popular, and it was called at one point the biggest thing to hit Europe since the Dyson vacuum cleaner.
Wow.
Which is just amazing, really. I mean, I think, apart from, I like the fact that I got clinical trials on it, but what I really like about it is there's so many hypnotists around the world who have launched their businesses on the back of this program. And, there was a couple in Australia, and they were going to give up the hypnosis practice because it had taken a bit of a lull. They weren't quite sure how they were going to get new clients through the door. And as a last-ditch thing, they thought, let's just take this virtual gastric band training and see. They immediately got 150 new clients through the door. And, from the referral process that they could put on the back of those clients and having a business structured right from it, it saved their hypnosis practice. And that's what I really like about it as well. But I think what's happened is, the general public, they watch all these programs about surgery and, so it's really bought into the public's imagination. But what we're doing as well, the reason it can be so successful with people is because just using that term, virtual surgery, we are attracting into our practice the most suggestible people, the people with the best imaginations. So that drives your success rate even higher.
Sure.
Because, generally with hypnosis, unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of the stage hypnotist. We have to work with whoever comes through our door, don't we? We can't say, oh, I'm sorry, you're not very good at hypnosis, so you're...
Yeah,
could you, please? Could you send me people who are better at it?
Yeah.
We don't have that luxury. But what this program does is it attracts the most suggestible people.
That's great.
The ones with the best imaginations.
So by the way, you say that it's not just about the band, but about a whole comprehensive protocol that deals with all aspects of weight loss. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the other stuff, some of the not band?
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm a very I use a lot of metaphors, to be honest with you, and it's really bad that I can't remember the the monumental guy in hypnosis who was about metaphor. Erickson. My mind had gone completely blank there for a minute.
He must have given you an amnesia suggestion.
Who is that guy? And there was a chap, actually, he came from America, and he said about it. He said, this is one of the best use of hypnosis I've seen since Milton Erickson. I thought, I'll wear that label. Yeah, I'll accept that label. That's fine, thank you. It comes from a very metaphoric background. So I use a lot of metaphors. There's versions in there. We have some parts therapy in it. There's lots of other ways that we use to address whatever issue, and is mixed and matched to suit the individual. But because the gastric band is really about putting the foundations in place with somebody. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of us, we've almost let go of the right foundations of eating. So, we have, clients who they've been and done every diet going. There might be the popular juicing diet at the moment, and they try that and then they go back to what they were doing before. But they never have the right foundations in place to begin with. So, we're just going to get, we're just going to get something to eat 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch and dinner, so we know the metabolism's working. We're going to get them to eat mindfully. We're going to get them to start responding to what the body tells them, as opposed to listening to anything else. But also give them some guidelines to follow that we want them to follow consciously. So I don't just rely, if you like, on the hypnosis working. I get an added buy-in by, I want you consciously to follow some of these things as well.
Okay. Typically, how many do you work multiple sessions with an individual client? Then it's not like one shot deal, right?
Yes. So I tend to work on a 4-session program, an initial 4-session program, and for the majority of people, that will be enough. We know it's that time for the habit formation, if you like, to take place. And on the very first session is when I do put in the imaginary type of surgery. There's a lot of future pacing goes on. There's a lot of, sort of high road, low road type of approach, but that's really where we put the foundations in place. And then we're going to build on that from there and see what the fallout is. So from the imaginary surgery, okay, which bits is this client struggling with? Are they going to struggle with emotional eating? Are they, what associations have they formed? Is it nighttime eating? Nighttime eating is a really sort of major thing with people. A lot of people that I see, they're already eating healthily. It's not necessarily that they're eating, 20 McDonald's a day or something. They're already eating healthily. It's just that we're eating too much of it still. Mm-hmm. And, some of the traditional, dieting systems, they say, you can eat as many carrots as you want, or, as much cabbage as you want, well, sure, or as much chicken as you want. Well, surely if I was to bring 10 truckloads of chicken down here, sooner or later I must be putting in more than I need. So we're going to bring them back to responding to what the body tells them. And really, it's all about making some small, realistic changes. If we can get somebody to make some small, realistic change, then we'll all gradually add up to the big change.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are a lot of folks that we work with who, hypnotherapists, actually, I'm referring to, who seem to default to regression work for so many things, and I understand that this technique doesn't really involve regression. Is that right?
No, very occasionally. If it's almost like if all else fails, if it appears that okay, we have to start fishing around a little bit deeper with this to get to a root cause of something. But in my experience, this program was something that I had clinically trialled with Hull University and Hull York Medical School. And what I understand from that trial is that the results are positive. What I don't know is how significant they are in comparison to some of the other diet programs that they were also trialling. But in 95% of cases, there has been no regression involved. And people say, well, does that last in the long term then? Is that going to last in the long term? Because, if you don't do regression, is there going to be a long-term result, or are they going to revert to what they were doing before? This program is about habit formation. And, will those habits last a lifetime? Well, those habits will last as long as the habits are there.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But as we know, things can change in people's lives. So occasionally, and the only thing sometimes that does throw it off is if somebody takes a big emotional hit. If there's some sort of, but generally we can pull them back on again. But I haven't found the need to follow that regression type of approach with somebody. There was a hypnotist in New York that I did a lot of work early on with, Mark Carlin, the New York City hypnotist. Uh-huh. And he and I did a lot of trainings together. And he had been using much more of a regression approach to his weight loss cases. And he said, following your program, he said, I never ever do it anymore. He said, it's easier on me, it's easier on the clients. You know, so it's a fairly simple process that we're going to put somebody through without the need to start fishing around. And I, very early on, before I got into virtual gastric band and working with things like this, I did do regression with weight loss. Mm-hmm. And what I personally found was that if you're not careful, you can open a can of worms that you then, you know, trying to like shut back down again. Sure. And you still haven't necessarily found out what actually is the issue here.
Right.
And there was one particular lady that really sticks in my mind, and she thought that she'd been abused by a father, but she wasn't quite sure. And during this regression, of course, whatever you look for, you'll find, she went back and, you know, believed she was being abused by a father. And after the hypnosis session, she said to me, you know, was that true? Did that actually happen? And, you know, what answer can you give to that? Well, I just sort of said, well, either your subconscious, you know, creates whatever it thinks you need at any one time. Sure. But, you know, fortunately, I mean, I worried about her for quite a while afterwards. But fortunately, her father was dead. And I was just really pleased her father was dead. Because otherwise, what potential can of worms or implications has that session just created?
Sure.
And, you know, did she lose the weight because of that session? I don't think she did. So, you know, I'm very much an evidence-based therapist, really. I like to see what is the evidence that this is making this happen.
Well, speaking of evidence, one of the things that you mentioned, or the question that you raised was, you know, does it last? And now you've been at this for a number of years. So how many years worth of follow-up do you have? When did you actually start?
How many what? Sorry, I missed the end of that, Mike.
How many years of follow-up do you have? I mean, when did you actually start?
So I started this, it must be coming up to 5 years ago now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And are you still tracking some of those people from the early?
Yeah, so I still, I mean, I'm very much one who does keep in touch with my clients, because partly from a business point of view, as well as I hope they're doing all right, but also from a business point of view, you know, and getting a referral process in place, it's far easier to talk to people that you already know than bringing in new people all the time. Really? So yeah, I regularly keep in touch with my clients, and they regularly get in touch with me as well. Nice. So yeah, I know the results are there. You know, it's not something where you would think, oh, I don't know if I dare contact this person. What if it stopped working? You know, or
yeah.
You know,
yeah, because every once in a while, I get people who talk about smoking programs. In fact, and it amazes me the statistics that I see hypnotists reporting. And you know, and I had one guy who says that what did he say? He was like getting 98.5% success rate, and no, I know. I got a guy who told me he was getting 100% success rate. And I asked him, how can you be sure about that? Are you following up with these people, or what are you doing? And he said, well, how I know is that I give people a guarantee, and the guarantee is that if it doesn't work, they can come back for a free session, and none of them ever come back. So, so he was assuming without any contact with them that they continue to be successful. So it's really nice to know, Sheila, that you have followed up and really are able to look back at a track history, of successes like this.
I think it's more, I think a lot of the time it's just about from working from the right place. I want to be able to sleep on the night time. I want to be able to think that I've done the best I possibly can for somebody. And if, something isn't quite right, that I have the opportunity to put it right for them or do whatever I can to help them a little bit more. Does this program work with everybody? No, it doesn't. Does your hypnosis work with everybody? No, it doesn't. Not everything will work for everybody. And very occasionally I've come across clients where they've done all the things you've asked them to do, they're eating less, but they're not actually losing any weight. Well, I can't, work that out in my own head. Okay, so we know it's that simple equation. Well, we're going to eat less or move more, and they're doing both those things and they're not losing weight. So in cases like that, where I think maybe they need to do something more nutritionally to look at things. I think there are certain people who need to follow a specific nutrition exercise type of plan. And part of this program now does start to look at the nutritional side of things. Has somebody got a nutritional deficiency? Because if they're deficient in something, biologically, we're trained to put our head back in the cupboards again. No matter how much hypnosis we train them not to, that biological urge will sort of take over. But in those cases, because I'm not a nutritionalist, I'm not an exercise guru, then I do actually end up paying for somebody to go and see a nutritionist and paying for the first session or paying for the first couple of sessions with a personal trainer, because I want that person to leave with a good feeling about me.
Right.
And also then if they're talking to somebody else, then hopefully they will say, well, it didn't work for me, but she did everything she possibly could.
Great. Well, listen, it sounds wonderful. So you got a complete program, and literally what you did with it was you filled your practice with it, and you've trained it to a number of people who have done just the same thing. And now we're coming towards Daytona Beach in May, and the folks on the call, perhaps some of them are considering whether this is a class that would be the right thing for them, and whether it's what they want to do. What will the class be like? Can you give some idea about
it?
I'm sure.
So with the class, actually, we do actually have a lot of fun, because I ask people to. Some people in the class can, if they want, experience it for themselves. So if they perhaps want to lose a few pounds themselves, they get to take part in it as well as the client demo. So I do get an independent client, somebody I don't know, to come in the first day. We get them to come back the second, find out what changes has been overnight. Has anything changed overnight? So there'll be client demos. We do some aversion work as well, because although aversion sometimes doesn't work in the long term, in this program we're just using it as like a sticking plaster until the right habits are formed, and it doesn't matter if that thing comes back in again, because they'll eat less of it. So we have a lot of fun with some aversion. I've had it where people have had to literally run out of the class to the bathroom.
Yeah.
They've just got out in time. So we have a lot of fun with that. But also, one of the other things I do teach within the class is quite a bit on the marketing side of things. How do you, and not just for this program, but how do you really ramp up your practice? So if you're looking to gain more clients, how do you go about doing that? So I teach pretty much business in a box.
Yeah.
And I hope that and I also, after the class, I like to think I make myself as available as possible. So I'm not a trainer who, come and take my training class and then goodbye, don't want to see you again, don't darken my door. The questions tend to come when people are then going and working with clients. You know, so perhaps on session 3 something's happened, or I'll then make myself as available as I possibly can, because although I'm not the font of all knowledge, all I can do is share my experiences. I have worked with hundreds of people with this program now, so there probably isn't a lot that somebody's going to come across that I haven't already faced myself at some point.
Nice. Good news. All right, so I'm looking at the clock. The time just goes so quickly, so I appreciate you hanging out with us. We're going to give people a chance to ask you some questions if they've got them. So here's the deal. As right now, all of you ladies and gentlemen on the call are muted, as you know. But if you have a question, how we do with the hand raising. If you're on video. You can raise your hand by going to that participants list, and down at the bottom of it, you'll see raise hand. I was explaining that earlier. You can open up the participants list just down there at the bottom of your screen if you haven't found that yet. I see that, in fact, we already have one question coming in from Sherry. I just want to let the rest of you know also, if you're on the telephone and you have a question, if you press *9, that will put your hand up as well, so that I'll know you have a question. So the first question right here, I am about to unmute Sherry, and Sherry, you got a question for Sheila.
Do you have something specifically for the people who are actually addicted to carbohydrates or some other type of food?
Yeah, I mean, hello Sherry, nice to meet you. What we'd look at is what the association show and how much of an addiction it actually is, or whether that is part of a belief system, if you like, that it's an addiction, and that it's been part of a life for so long that it almost becomes a friend, doesn't it? And the thing that they turn to. So yeah, the program addresses all of that side of things as well.
Okay.
But a lot of it is getting the client to, we do a fair amount of goal setting, sort of, okay, so what's life going to look like if you don't have this thing? What is it you actually want to achieve? Why do you want to do it? What difference is it going to make? Because without that clear forward goal of what that's going to look like, then why would somebody want to let it go?
True.
And so, it's got to be a really strong emotional attachment to whatever we're going to work towards that is going to help that. Because we're all motivated one of two ways. We're either going towards pleasure or away from pain.
True.
So, we want to make that forward one. Yes, might we use a little bit of away from pain, but we really want to make that forward one as pleasurable as possible.
Okay.
And also, when it's something like that, it's whether there is a nutritional deficiency that's creating that as well.
Yeah. I just noticed carbohydrates seem to be the thing. They can't leave the bread alone. It's always bread and buns.
Yeah, bread is always, that's a really common one. And I think actually it was the bread one that made somebody almost physically sick.
Oh.
Seminar wasn't it? This poor chap was sitting on the front row. I'll always remember it because he just literally got up and ran. They came back in and he said, I feel so ill.
Goodness.
And I noticed at lunch he wasn't eating bread.
And never again.
Yeah.
Nice.
I hope has that helped, Sherry?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Good.
Thanks for your question, Sherry. Anybody else have a question? I see, and I don't mean to pick on you, but I see Catherine's iPad that you have taken yourself off of mute. Does that mean you have a question?
I do. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you.
Hello.
Hi, Sheila. My question is a mental health question. As we deal with people who have got eating disorders, and one of the eating disorders is binge eating, and we know that they flow from being anorexic to being bulimic to being a binge eater, and we can't decipher when you see a binge eater because they can be obese. How do you pick those people out in virtual band, because they can come to us for a virtual band process, and of course they can flow backwards and forwards because we have to protect them and ourselves. How do you train people to do that?
Yeah, hi. I think the important thing there is what the information that we're getting from the client before we even start the process.
They're not always truthful.
But I mean, we can only get somebody to sign to say, okay, what they're telling us is the truth here. On sort of your client intake form. But I would like to hope that they would actually highlight themselves to me anyway. It's all about that rapport to a certain extent. The better relationship we have, the more rapport we build, the more they're going to tell us, the more we're going to pick up on.
Right.
This isn't a program necessarily for people who have eating disorders. Although saying that, I have to say, there's a lady who has an eating disorders in New York, and her name completely slips her mind at the moment. I would be able to get it for you. And she was tasked with writing Binge Eating for Dummies.
Right.
And the book it's been out a while now, with Binge Eating for Dummies. And she had a hypnotist who took my training and has taken it into this eating disorders unit. And she has said that this is the best program, hands down, for putting the right foundations back in place with somebody. Now, if somebody has an eating disorder, then they need to obviously have more work on top of that done. It can't be just
it's a mental illness.
It can't just be this and that's it. But they are using it within that eating disorders unit.
Okay.
Because I think the way to look at it is more, it's trying to address and put foundations back in place. There's the mental health issues that we need to clearly address as well. And there could be multi-therapy approaches to those. But what it's doing is just foundational stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Does that all make sense?
I just wondered how that goes, because you can get somebody who's binge eating who looks obese but can flow through to bulimic and anorexic, or can be anorexic, bulimic, and is now binge eating. And that would fuel them back into anorexic or bulimic. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And also, actually thinking about it, there was another lady that I did work with early on, and she had bulimia. And she was actually working with a therapist at the time and had been for a long while working with a counsellor. And she'd seen an article in one of the national newspapers about this work that I was doing. And she'd said to her counsellor, I really want to go and see that lady. And this counsellor had said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think it'll do you any good. Anyway, she came to see me, and from talking to her, we decided we would go ahead. And that bulimia never showed its face again. We did the work, and it has never showed its face.
It depends on what the trigger is. And I just wondered whether you taught your students to recognise triggers in people with a mental health, with eating disorders.
Yeah,
that's what I was asking.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in, sort of eating disorders per se, if you like. So it's not within the training program.
Right. Okay, that was probably the question I should have asked.
Yeah. We'll just work our way around to that.
Yeah, we'll just have a little chat,
Yeah.
Cheers.
All right. Thank you, Catherine. But by the way, something that I might mention just along those lines, for most of us here in the States, if there is a diagnosed condition like that, we need to have some kind of referral or some connection with the person that made that diagnosis in the first place. One of the things that I noticed, Sheila, in my notes about you is that you're particularly skillful at getting referrals from medical practitioners, and that I think really covers a multitude, in terms of there's a vehicle there to screen out, in a sense, people that may not be appropriate for this therapy. And And
yeah, I mean, obviously, my practice is based in a doctor's office.
Right, right.
You know, that's where I base my practice, you know, and, you know, gradually over the period of time, you know, I get referrals from consultants, doctors, you know, so, and if I ever have any doubt about somebody, and with not just gastric band, just with any type of hypnotherapy really, if I'm ever not quite sure, you know, is this right or wrong for this person, then I say, can you go and talk to your doctor? Let them know that you're thinking about having this done, and you know, get me a doctor's letter to say that he thinks that will be all right.
Yeah, the voice of reason. There you go.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
A really important thing. So, Sheila, I hate to tell you this, but I think we've run out of time.
Is it my bedtime?
So before you go to bed, let me just wrap here, and then we'll say goodnight to you. I just need to remind everybody on the call that we are having this call because we are getting ready for the big Hypno Expo 2017 in Daytona Beach, May 19th to the 21st. The program that Sheila will be doing is the 2 days before that. It's a 2-day pre-conference program, so it's on Wednesday the 17th and Thursday the 18th of May. Oh my God, what a wonderful time to be in Daytona Beach, you guys. I'm keeping an eye on it for you. So you're really going to want to come to this. There will be a recording available tomorrow, posted on the forum. And for those of you who don't have access to that, if you send me a note, flhypno@outlook.com, I will be happy to send you a link so that you can listen again to the thing from tonight. Actually, the link is for an MP4, so you'll be able to see as well. Those of you who are on the phone, if you didn't get to, if you really feel like you missed out on all the charm and wonder of the fresh and lively faces here tonight, you'll be able to see them. So next week, I'm going to be talking to George Bien, who will be talking about the IACT Master Trainer program. So do come back next week, y'all, and listen to what George has to say. And now that's all the announcements. So Sheila, I can't thank you enough for staying up for us, and I noticed that you weren't even doing any of that late night snacking or anything that I'm prone to do. So
yeah, see the pile of chocolate next to me.
Well, there you go. Just some things are very important, and chocolate I think is one. So I'm really looking forward to the conference. It's the first time I've been to Daytona Beach. I'm really excited. You know, very, very grateful to Robert, Linda, letting me come over. And I'm looking forward to meeting a whole load of hypnotists. Well, and we are just thrilled and excited about having you here with us. So we'll look forward to seeing you then. And now I'm going to do something really outrageous, and that is that I am going to take everybody off mute all at once. So one of two things will happen. People will either be able to say goodbye, 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 you know, just like on the Waltons, or there will be all kinds of feedback, but it will only last for a moment. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight, and come back and hear us next Sunday night, and we'll do it again. Night, everybody.
Night.
Bye.
Sheila,
From Wyoming.
Bring chocolate when you come to Daytona. Right?
Yes, excellent.
Bye. Goodbye.
Thank you. Good night.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Michael.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks for being here, y'all. Good night.
Good night.